Hello, welcome. It's Francis here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid thee welcome. There is a subscribe button below if you would like to help support this channel. Also a bell to be notified when I upload more content. I'm coming to you from Ghana country. As such, I acknowledge the Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians of this land. So I've sort of done a little bit of writing up in relation to my many piles of notes, and not quite sure if I've done a video on secrecy, especially in relation to initiatory or contemporary witchcraft. Apologies if I have, but this video is all about. Maybe I should actually do a list of topics that I have covered and topics that I haven't. So never mind. Could be updated or a repeat. If it's a repeat, I do apologize. So it's reared its head again in relation to the validity of oath takings and the secrecy that's attached to or associated with it, especially within most, if not all, contemporary or initiatory witchcraft traditions. And in particular, there is an oath that is undertaken by the initiate upon their initiation, which basically states that they agree that certain things will not be revealed to outsiders, i.e., non-initiates. A sort of knee-jerk reaction to this is that outsiders tend to belittle this need for oaths, especially with the viewpoint that everything is published, so there's no need for any alleged secrecy. Or then there is the perception that initiates hold some sort of elitism, snobbish, have this holier than thou attitude, or even that we hold some sort of power and won't share it with other people. Well, elitism, to be perfectly honest, I'm actually quite fine with that. I do not believe that the craft, regardless of how watered down it becomes, is actually suitable for everyone. It's just my own personal opinion. And no, I also believe that not everything is published and readily available. Besides, that is not actually the point of initiation. And yeah, I'm more than happy to share what I know, my experiences, my teachings, if people become initiated. As simple as that. Where these sort of belittling, begrudging attitudes come from, I think it's what we call in Australia FOMO, fear of missing out. Yet such people who sort of put off this or exert this attitude do not seem to realize that we all actually have access to the mysteries. And I think it was Ray Buckland in his big blue book many years ago said that you can shout the mysteries from the rooftop. However, only those who understand will know the mysteries are all about. And this is the point. Initiation sets up a specific lens and interpretation of mysteries. And this is what sets initiatory and contemporary witchcraft apart from other forms of anything goes, do what you feel like forms of witchcraft available. And having said that, it's not the only lens, it's just a particular lens. There has always been mystery cults, and that's nothing new either. Magical secrecy can be found throughout other esoteric or occult traditions, practices, symbolisms. First thing in relation to magical secrecy, or the mention of magical secrecy that comes to mind, is within the four powers of the Sphinx, what has been interpreted or revamped or recalled as the Magician's Pyramid, or the Magi Pyramid, Pyramid of the Magi, or the Witch's Pyramid, which is to know, to will, to dare, and to keep silent. Magical secrecy with respect to spell work, etc., is often taught that best effect that the magical outcome can have is to keep quiet about the working. Again, the four powers of the Sphinx. And these four powers, and I'm quite sure I have done a video on this as well, dates back to 18th, 19th century, to the writings of occultist Elphilas Levi. Again, to know, to will, to dare, to keep silent. Each power relates to an element, and is this final power, to keep silent, that is the important and these days often overlooked, especially if you're looking at social media, which is full of images of spell workings and altars, and people asking other people's opinions on spell out. The more you talk, the more you share your workings, the more it becomes diluted. Not to mention that you're opening yourself up to enemies and their ability to use counter magic against you, jealousy, anybody who might just have a grudge against you, or even disbelieve in you, your power and magic. Other time when magical secrecy comes to play, as I mentioned, is initiation, forming part of the initiatory rite, or the behind the scenes stuff. In relation to the rite itself, where you agree not to disclose certain aspects. And we also hear of the joke of what happens in the circle stays in the circle. It comes from Fight Club. And this also relates to not just initiatory or the act of initiation, but also if you're working in a group anyway, what is happening within that particular circle stays in that circle. It's really nobody else's business. It also, though this doesn't seem to happen these days as well, it did extend to not outing other witches, other coven members, other magicians in situations outside of that rite or that event. Like if you met them at the supermarket or down at the mall, etc. We seem to have forgotten, or we seem to have this illusion that we are in this sort of religious freedom society. We may be, except when it comes to magical or esoteric tradition. There is still a lot of prejudice about, and to out somebody, even on social media. I know some people go by pseudonyms or very heavily censor what they share on their own social media pages, especially if they have family and friends or even work colleagues, where people may not be overtly comfortable with the occult. This again is not new. Even the Masons still today have their secret handshakes, their pins, their cufflinks that will identify them to those who know. Some of these symbols, yes, we may be familiar with them, with the compass and the square. But again, there is an act of secrecy involved for only those who know will know. We may be in the 21st century, yet, as I said, the burning times, the persecutions of being different, whether it is witchcraft, new age, esoteric, sometimes, depending on where you live, it could even be even crystals, still occurs. People still lose their jobs. Being outed as a witch, having even like an altar, even if it's not a working altar, like this, can be brought up as evidence against you. Courts of law, especially in relation to child custody battles. People still receive death threats, especially with this rise of evangelistic Christianity and other far-right groups. Even wearing an ankh or collection of charms here. I know some people where I work, I'm funny. Or when I say that my beads are actually not a beaded necklace, it's a mala. I have to sort of modify what I'm talking about. We don't have the degree of religious freedom that we like to think we do, even here in Australia. And we are a little bit more liberal than in parts of America. As I said, there is this rise of evangelistic Christianity and other far-right groups. And while, say, you may not be outrightly fired based on your religion, because that's actually discrimination, you may find yourself losing your job in another roundabout way. I know I did back in I think it was the 1990s. Not for the whole witchcraft thing, but I made it known that I was studying numerology at the time. I think I even used the word esoteric numerology. And little did I know that a couple of the partners of the firm that I was working with, or working for, were actually very strong, strict Christians. Now, another part of magical secrecy is that certain teachings are actually best understood within a context, having that sort of lens I talked about, through which they are viewed at. And this context is found within the inner teachings and trainings. Coming back to the Ray Buckland quote that I mentioned earlier about shouting the mysteries from the rooftop, but only those who know will actually hear and understand them. And this, again, is because initiatory witchcraft, contemporary witchcraft is a mystery tradition. Part of experiencing the mysteries is actually going through and doing things in a specific way in order to get specific results. And okay, these results may actually differ from person to person, whoever is there. However, there is a common element, a common thread that will enable those who know be able to talk and relate to the experiences. That if you talked about your ritual experiences outside the circle, in some ways you may actually profane the experience, listen it, evaluate it, and then the greater mystery. When we sort of see this in a way happening as in the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, there's been a real academic approach to witchcraft. While it's good on the one hand, we're getting academic scholars attempting to explain away what witches do. And as such, people think that they know everything about contemporary initiatory witchcraft. Maybe on some level, but In truth, they don't know. They know the surface level, the external stuff. Because as I said, a mystery tradition has to be experienced. You've got to have that experiential knowledge behind it, and also that lens through which to interpret it. Anybody can turn up at a ritual and have an ecstatic experience. But unless you have that sort of framework, that guidance, that lens to look through, that is in line with contemporary or literary witchcraft, that experience can be easily interpreted as something completely different. Not saying it's wrong or right, it's just different. Having said that, there's many ways to interpret and experience. And again, with social media, with people asking others in relation to, say, candle magics or spell jars, what does this candle mean if it does this or it burns like that? It's irrelevant what other people around you think, because they do not know your mindset or see things through your own lens. And it comes down to the interpretation. And it's just one way, or one of the many ways, not the only way. And this is not similar to exclusionary. It is just based, or just such that circles are based on experience. Until you've actually done something in a way that's done within a contemporary witchcraft circle, you truly don't know. It doesn't matter how much you read, there'll be a limit to what you know. So when people talk about Wicca or contemporary witchcraft, because they do sort of blend the two together, I have to find myself asking, what do you mean by Wicca? Because there are so many different interpretations these days. They can talk about the philosophies. They can describe apparent rituals or altar setups and the mechanics. But what gets lost is the translation of the experience. For example, I don't know what it's like to go through childbirth. I've never had a child. However, I know and I can read enough about the mechanics. I can even watch videos these days of the process. But I still do not know on a deeper level what it actually feels like, what it actually means. And the same can be said with anything. Often what is experienced within witchcraft circles, within rites, is very ecstatic experiences. How do you explain what happens or how this feels like to someone who has no idea, who has never been there, has never experienced it? You simply can't. And as I said, it's like with anything, unless you've gone through it, there will always be a limit to what you truly know. And more so when we're dealing with something that is, at the very least, that experience. It doesn't mean that it's the only experience or the best experience. It just means it's that experience. And at the end of the day, especially in the sort of information overload of the society that we live in, there are simply things that we just can't talk about. We cannot explain. And another point about secrecy and oaths, I think it's very important and again often overlooked. And it comes into the sort of elitism and a sort of like in club, but it creates a common bond with your fellow initiates. It's almost like say, a group of friends, and it sets them apart from the wider community. Or it could be like a sports team that have their own experiences that maybe even their partners or their siblings or their parents do not fully understand because they don't play in that sports team. And yes, there's always going to be an inner and outer group. It's natural. And it's one that's based on experience. And when you start to, or your focus is to deconstruct something, especially something that's spiritual, magical, esoteric, it actually loses that mysticism. Such experiences can be dissected and overanalyzed, intellectualized, and then they start to reach a point where they lose their value and they get dismissed, belittled, deemed irrelevant, and then the focus shifts. So for any seeker, if you want to know everything before you get into it, realize that there is a limit to what can actually be explained. Simply because until you experience it, you do not actually have that knowledge base of understanding. And it's got nothing to do with the intellect. You can read, you can study as many books, watch as many videos, as many podcasts as you like. But there's still going to be a limit until you actually experience it. And this is why I get not frustrated, yes, frustrated, disappointed, this sort of emphasis on, or that some people have on just reading. There will come a time where you're going to have to put down the books and do. Yes, knowledge, I'm an author, I should know, is important, but there's going to be a time where you're going to have to experience it yourself because you can't. Writers can't put things into words in a way so you can truly experience them. Even path workings or meditations, even recording them, it comes down to your personal experience. And that is the mystery of what opens for you. And that's part of the secrecy, is that you have this inner explanation that's built up. But even that can only take you so far. So the intention of secrecy is not about exclusion. It's simply that the experience cannot actually be put in words. And that is the joy, or the draw card, at least for me, of contemporary or mystery witchcraft. You have a collective group of people on the same wavelength, same mindset, same knowledge base, looking through the same lens, or a very similar lens, and shaping the mysteries as such. Blessings.